My stepmom made me pay rent in my childhood home after dad's death, declaring that I'm not family, just some burden she's stuck with who needs to pay their way. She added that my dad would want me to support her, not freeload. Turns out dad left me everything and she'd been stealing my inheritance, so I took my revenge. Sup, Reddit. So this happened about 8 months ago, but I'm finally ready to talk about it. Still processing everything, to be honest. My 20 male dad died in a car accident last winter. He was only 48 and basically the only real parent I had left since my mom passed when I was 6. The accident happened on a Tuesday, and he was gone before the ambulance even got there. No warning, no chance to say goodbye, just gone. Then Grace, 45 female, came into the picture. My dad met her when I was 14 at some work conference and brought her home for dinner about 6 months later. She seemed all right at first, I guess. But looking back now, I can see she was always playing favorites with her son Aaron, 17 male. He has basically been treated like royalty since day one. We're talking private school that costs more than most people's cars, brand new BMW for his 16th birthday, designer clothes, expensive gaming setup, the whole 9 yards. Meanwhile, I got hand-me-downs from Goodwill and lectures about being grateful for what you have. About a week after we buried Dad, Grace calls me into the living room with this weird fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. Aaron's lounging on the couch like he owns the place, smirking at something on his phone. Probably some meme about poor people or whatever these prep school kids think is funny. Grace sits down across from me and puts on her serious voice. She explains that Aaron needs my room because it's bigger and he's got all his gaming setup and study materials. His current room is too small for someone with his academic needs. I'm getting moved to the guest room whether I like it or not. I just stared at her. We're talking about my room, the room I've had since I was 12, where all my wrestling trophies were displayed on the shelves Dad built for me, where I had my band posters up and my guitar in the corner, where Dad would come talk to me late at night when I couldn't sleep after Mom died, just sitting on the edge of my bed telling me stories about when he was a kid. Aaron didn't even look up from his phone when Grace was explaining this. Just kept scrolling with this satisfied smirk, like he'd won some kind of contest. When I asked where I was supposed to put all my stuff, Grace waved her hand dismissively and said the guest room had a closet and dresser. I'd figure it out. I wanted to say something, but honestly, I was still in shock from losing Dad. My brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton, and everything seemed surreal. I didn't have the energy to fight about room assignments when I was barely managing to get out of bed each morning. So I moved my stuff to the guest room and watched Aaron take over my childhood bedroom like it was Christmas morning. The guest room sucked. It's right next to the laundry room. So Grace's 6 a.m. washing machine routine would wake me up every morning. The window faces directly into the neighbor's backyard, where their German Shepherd barks at squirrels starting around sunrise. And the room is tiny, barely fits a twin bed and one small dresser. No space for my guitar, no room for the desk Dad bought me for homework. Everything felt cramped and temporary. Aaron loved rubbing it in too. He'd walk by my new room and make comments about how much space he had now, how grateful he was that his mom finally gave him a room that matched his needs. Started calling it his sanctuary and talking about all the improvements he was planning. Meanwhile, I'm sleeping in what's basically a glorified closet. That should have been my first red flag that things were about to get way worse. But I was grieving and not thinking straight. I figured Grace was just stressed about Dad being gone and trying to make Aaron feel more settled. I thought maybe after a few weeks things would go back to normal. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the kitchen eating a bowl of Cheerios before heading to work, where I'd been doing part-time hours since junior year. It's like 7 a.m., and Grace comes walking in wearing her bathrobe and slippers, pouring herself coffee from Dad's old Mr. Coffee machine that he'd had since before he married Mom. She sits down across from me with this fake concerned expression and starts talking about household finances and new responsibilities now that Dad's gone. I'm half awake thinking she's going to ask me to help with groceries or something. Wrong as hell. Grace tells me it's time I start contributing to the household expenses since I'm 20 years old and have a job. Aaron doesn't need to worry about this stuff because he's still in high school and focused on his studies. But I'm an adult now, and adults pay their own way. When I ask what she means by contributing, she drops the number. $800 a month. For rent. To live in the guest room. In the house I've called home for 8 years. I literally started choking on my cereal. $800 a month for a room that's maybe 10 by 10 feet with a window that faces the neighbor's air conditioning unit. For comparison, Aaron gets my old room, which is probably 3 times bigger, has 2 windows, a walk-in closet, and its own bathroom entrance. And he pays exactly $0 for this privilege. She tells me I need to find somewhere else to live or get a better job if I can't handle basic adult responsibilities. Says she can't keep supporting grown men who don't pull their weight around here. The way she emphasized grown men really pissed me off. Like I was some deadbeat cousin crashing on her couch instead of the kid who'd been living in this house since middle school. I reminded her that I'd been helping with house stuff for years, mowing the lawn every week, shoveling snow in winter, fixing things when they broke, helping Dad with projects in the garage. But apparently none of that counted as contributing in Grace's world. Aaron was loving every minute of this conversation. He comes downstairs in his pajamas right as Grace is explaining the rent situation and gets this huge grin on his face. Starts making comments about how it's about time, someone made me pay my fair share, and how he's grateful his mom actually cares about teaching responsibility. This is the same kid who's never had a job in his life, gets a $200 weekly allowance for basically existing, and had mommy buy him a $60,000 car for his birthday. But sure, lecture me about responsibility. I tried to negotiate. Asked if I could pay $400 or $500 instead, maybe do extra work around the house to make up the difference. Grace wasn't having it. 800 or find somewhere else to live. Take it or leave it. The next few weeks were hell. I picked up every extra shift my boss could give me, working sometimes 45 to 50 hours when guys called in sick or they had rush jobs. My hands were constantly covered in grease and cuts from working on engines and bodywork. I'd come home exhausted at like 8 p.m. and still have to listen to Aaron complaining about his homework being too hard or needing money for some prep school event. Grace made the first rent payment feel like some kind of ceremony. I handed her 8 100 bills on the first of the month, and she counted them slowly in front of me, making comments about how good it felt to see me stepping up and taking responsibility. Aaron watched the whole thing with this smug smile like he was witnessing some kind of victory. The worst part was how Grace started treating me after I paid the first month, like I was a tenant instead of family. Started making rules about when I could use the kitchen, complained if I left dishes in the sink for more than an hour, told me I needed to ask permission before having friends over. But Aaron could do whatever he wanted. Friends sleeping over on school nights, music loud enough to shake the windows, leaving messes everywhere that magically got cleaned up by Grace. By the second month, I was drowning. My boss had to cut everyone's hours because business was slow, so I was only getting like 20 hours a week. I barely scraped together $600 for Grace and had to promise her the other $200 by the 15th. She made this huge deal about how disappointed she was that I couldn't even manage basic budgeting. Aaron thought my financial problems were hilarious. Started calling me the tenant and making jokes about eviction notices. Asked Grace if she was going to charge me extra for using too much hot water or leaving lights on. Kid was living like a king in my old room while I was basically homeless with a roof over my head that I couldn't afford. That's when I realized what Grace was really doing. She didn't want $800 from me. She wanted me gone. This wasn't about money or teaching responsibility or any of that bullshit. She wanted me out of the picture so she and Aaron could have the whole house to themselves, plus whatever money Dad left behind. The rent scam was just her way of forcing me out without looking like the villain. Make it impossible for me to stay, then act like it was my choice to leave when I couldn't keep up with payments. I started looking at apartments online during my lunch breaks at work. Found this tiny studio across town for $650 a month. It was basically a glorified closet with a mini fridge and a hot plate, but at least it would be mine. At least nobody could change the rules on me or make me feel like a burden for existing. Grace had played this perfectly. She got my room for Aaron, got rid of me without having to actually kick me out, and probably saved herself money since she wouldn't have to buy food for me anymore. So I'm sitting in my new studio apartment on a Tuesday night around 9 p.m. when my phone rings. Unknown number, but it's local area code, so I figure what the hell, maybe it's work calling about picking up shifts. Christian, it's Joshua. For a second I'm confused, but then it clicks. Joshua's been Dad's best friend since they were like 8 years old. They grew up 3 houses apart, went to the same school, were each other's best men at their weddings. This guy knows more stories about Dad than I do, going back to when they were kids getting into trouble with BB guns and stolen candy bars. I hadn't talked to Joshua since Dad's funeral 2 months ago. He'd given me this bear hug that lasted like 30 seconds and told me to call him if I needed anything. But honestly, I'd been too messed up to reach out to anyone. Just trying to survive day by day, you know? Hey Joshua, what's up? I'm muting the TV because Joshua's not the type to call just to chat. I've been thinking about you a lot lately, kid. How you holding up? I give him the standard bullshit answer about doing okay and taking things one day at a time. But Joshua's known me since I was in diapers, so he sees right through it. Look, I heard that you moved out of the house. That true? Word travels fast in our town, especially when it involves anything dramatic. Probably my neighbor next door saw me loading boxes into my Honda and started spreading the news. Yeah, Grace wanted me to start paying rent and I couldn't swing it. Easier to just get my own place. There's this long pause where I can practically hear Joshua's brain working. She made you pay rent? In your dad's house? When I explain the whole $800 situation, Joshua goes quiet for so long I thought the call dropped. Then he says something that caught my attention. Jesus Christ, Christian. Your father would be losing his absolute mind if he knew what that woman is doing to you. We talk for a few more minutes and Joshua says we need to meet in person this weekend. Says there's stuff about dad I need to know. Stuff that Grace probably doesn't want me finding out about. The way he says it makes my stomach twist up because Joshua's never been the dramatic type. If he's concerned about something, there's usually a damn good reason. Saturday afternoon, we meet at this old school place. Joshua looks older than I remember from the funeral. More gray in his beard, deeper lines around his eyes, but he's still got that same no-bullshit attitude that reminded me of Dad when they'd hang out in the garage working on engines and drinking beer. Joshua cuts right to the point. Your dad started asking me weird questions about 6 months before he died. Legal stuff, financial protection, how to make sure assets stay in the family no matter what happens. This is news to me. Dad never mentioned anything about legal problems or money worries. Far as I knew, everything was fine financially. Dad had his job at the power company. Grace worked part-time at some insurance office. They paid the bills and took a vacation to Florida every couple years. I ask him what kind of questions. Joshua stirs sugar into his coffee and thinks for a minute. Like how trusts work. Whether someone could contest a will if they thought they deserved more money. How to protect assets from people who might try to take advantage of a situation. He tells me Dad had been meeting with his lawyer a bunch of times throughout last year. Not just for basic will stuff, but for complicated legal arrangements that Dad wouldn't explain in detail. Just said he was getting his affairs in order and wanted to make sure certain people were protected if anything happened to him. Protected from what? I ask. That's what I wanted to know too. But your dad was being real secretive about it. Said he hoped he was wrong about some things, but wanted to be prepared just in case. Joshua reaches into his jacket and pulls out this business card. Heavy paper, expensive looking, with some law firm name and fancy lettering. This is your dad's lawyer. He slides the card across the table to me. I called him last week and mentioned your situation with Grace making you move out. Soon as I said your name, he got real quiet. Asked a bunch of questions about where you've been living and whether Grace had been in contact with you. Did he say why? Just that he's been trying to reach you for months, but keeps getting told you're not available or not interested in talking. Apparently, Grace has been taking messages and never passing them along. This hits me like a punch to the stomach. Grace never mentioned any lawyer calling. Never said anything about Dad's estate or legal stuff that needed to be handled. But thinking back, there were a few times when the phone would ring and she'd answer it real quick, talking in hushed tones before hanging up and saying it was nobody important. You think I should call him? Joshua's already nodding before I finish the question. I think you should call him first thing Monday morning. And Christian, bring any paperwork you have from when your dad died. Insurance stuff, death certificate, anything official looking. We end up talking for almost 2 hours about Dad and old times. When we're getting ready to leave, Joshua grabs my shoulder and looks me dead in the eye. Your dad loved you more than anything in this world. You know that, right? He would never want you struggling like this, paying rent to live in some tiny apartment while Grace and her kid take over his house. Driving back to my studio that night, I keep thinking about what Joshua said. Dad was always protective of me, especially after Mom died. He'd check my homework every night, come to every wrestling match even when he was exhausted from work, taught me how to change oil and fix basic car problems so I wouldn't get ripped off by mechanics. It would be totally like Dad to try to set something up to make sure I was taken care of if something happened to him. He was always thinking 3 steps ahead, always had backup plans for everything. Maybe Grace isn't as in control of Dad's estate as she's been acting. Maybe there's stuff she doesn't know about, or stuff she's been hoping I'd never find out about. The business card sits on my tiny kitchen counter all weekend, while I work extra shifts at the shop and try to figure out what Dad might have been planning. Monday morning can't come fast enough. Whatever Dad set up, whatever he was worried about, I'm about to find out. And something tells me Grace isn't gonna like it one bit. My shift doesn't start until 8:30, but I wanted to call the lawyer's office right when they opened, because Joshua made it sound urgent as hell. The lawyer picks up before I can even think about what I'm gonna say. Christian, thank God you finally called. I've been trying to reach you for 4 months. Where the hell have you been? I explain that I moved out of the house and Grace never mentioned any lawyer calling. He goes quiet for like 30 seconds, and when he speaks again, his voice has this edge to it. She told you I never called? Son, I've called that house at least 15 times since your father's death, left detailed messages with Grace about needing to discuss your father's estate with you urgently. My stomach drops. What about the estate? Grace said everything was handled already. We need to meet in person today if possible. Can you come in this afternoon? Say around 2 p.m.? I tell my boss I need to leave early for a family emergency, which isn't exactly a lie. The lawyer's office has dark wood paneling, leather chairs that probably cost more than my car, and law books stacked up to the ceiling. He's got this thick manila folder on his desk with Dad's name written on it in black marker. The thing's got to be 3 inches thick, stuffed full of papers and documents. First off, let me say how sorry I am about your father. He was a good man and one of my favorite clients. Thanks. So what did you need to talk to me about? The lawyer opens the folder and starts pulling out papers. Legal documents with official seals and signatures, bank statements, property deeds, stuff I don't understand, but looks important as hell. Your father came to see me about 18 months before his death. He wanted to completely restructure his financial assets to ensure you were protected, regardless of what happened to him. I nodded while he went on. He didn't give me specific details, but he was very concerned about making sure his assets went to you and couldn't be accessed or controlled by anyone else. He set up what's called a revocable living trust with you as the sole beneficiary. I have no clue what that means, but it sounds complicated. What's in this trust? The lawyer starts reading from a typewritten document. The family home and all property, including the garage and backyard shed. His life insurance policy, worth $750,000. His retirement accounts from the power company, totaling approximately $380,000. His personal vehicle, tools, and workshop equipment, all checking and savings accounts, and any other assets acquired during his lifetime. My brain is trying to process this information, but it's not making sense. Wait, the house? But Grace lives there. She's the one who kicked me out. The lawyer takes off his glasses and cleans them slowly, like he's buying time to figure out how to explain something really bad. Christian, Grace has absolutely no legal claim to that house. The property deed was transferred into the trust 6 months before your father died. She's been living there without any legal right to do so. But she's been acting like she owns everything. She made me pay rent and moved me out of my room. The lawyer's face gets this really serious expression, and he starts writing notes on a legal pad. She charged you rent? To live in your own house? I tell him the whole story. The lawyer keeps taking notes, and his expression gets darker with every detail I give him. Christian, this constitutes fraud on multiple levels. Grace has been stealing from you. Every financial decision she's made regarding that property, every dollar she's spent from your father's accounts, it's all been illegal. So what does this mean exactly? It means you are the legal owner of everything your father left behind. The house, the life insurance money, all of it. Grace has been living off your inheritance while charging you rent for your own property. The lawyer pulls out more documents showing bank account activity since Dad died. There's been major spending. Aaron's car payment, his private school tuition, some kind of kitchen renovation that cost 30 grand, new furniture, expensive clothes shopping, all coming out of accounts that legally belong to me. How much has she spent? The lawyer flips through several pages of statements. Approximately $180,000 since your father's death. And that's not counting the ongoing monthly expenses like Aaron's school and car insurance. I'm sitting there trying to wrap my head around this. Why didn't Dad tell me about any of this? He planned to explain everything when you turned 21. The trust was designed to protect you during the transition period if something happened to him before then. Unfortunately, he ran out of time. The lawyer hands me another business card. This one for some woman who apparently specializes in estate fraud cases. I'm calling her as soon as you leave here. We can freeze all the accounts immediately and force Grace to return every penny she's stolen. Plus, the rent situation could qualify as criminal fraud depending on how aggressive you want to get. Walking out of the lawyer's office, my head is spinning. 8 months of thinking I was some broke kid with no family and no options. And it turns out I own a $500,000 house, and my stepmom's been robbing me blind the entire time. This woman had been playing me from day one, probably planning this whole scam from the moment Dad died. Maybe even before that. I call Joshua from the parking lot and tell him everything. When I get to the part about Grace stealing $180,000 of my money, he goes completely silent. He finally says, "What's the lawyer going to do about it? Freeze everything and get my money back. Plus, I can move back into my house whenever I want." Driving back to my tiny studio apartment, I keep thinking about Dad and how smart he was to see this coming. While Grace was probably planning her takeover, Dad was 3 steps ahead making sure I'd be protected. She thought she was so clever, playing the grieving widow while stealing everything Dad worked for. But Dad knew exactly what kind of person she was. Time to take back what's mine. Tuesday morning, I wake up to my phone buzzing with missed calls from unknown numbers. 3 voicemails from Grace sounding increasingly panicked, asking why her debit card isn't working and demanding I call her back immediately. Last message, she's practically screaming about how there must be some mix-up with the bank accounts. The fraud specialist called the day before to let me know all of Dad's accounts were frozen as of Monday at 5 p.m. Grace can't access a single penny until the investigation is complete, and she pays back everything she stole. I delete Grace's voicemails without listening to them completely. Don't need that kind of negativity in my life. But I want to know more about what Dad suspected before he died. Just learning about the trust isn't enough. There had to be a reason Dad was so worried about protecting his assets from Grace specifically. So I call Joshua and ask if he'll help me go through some of Dad's old stuff I grabbed when I moved out. Saturday afternoon, Joshua comes over to my studio apartment with a six-pack, and we start digging through 2 cardboard boxes of Dad's personal items. Most of it's normal stuff, but at the bottom of the second box, wrapped in one of Dad's old Broncos t-shirts, there's this manila folder I've never seen before. It's got Dad's handwriting on the tab. Just says important, CJS, which are my initials. Inside the folder are printouts of emails, bank statements I don't recognize, and what looks like some kind of background check report. All the documents are dated from about 2 years ago. Holy shit, I tell Joshua, reading through the first email. Dad hired a private investigator to look into Grace. Joshua leans over to see what I'm reading. The emails are between Dad and some PI company in Denver, talking about conducting a discreet background investigation on Grace Chen. Apparently that was her maiden name before she married Dad. The first report is basic stuff. Previous addresses, employment history, credit checks, court records. But then it gets interesting real fast. Grace had been married before she met Dad, to some guy named Robert Chen who lives in San Francisco. She told Dad her first husband was a deadbeat who took off when Aaron was born, said she'd been struggling as a single mom for years before they met. According to the PI report, that was complete bullshit. Robert Chen is very much alive and living in California, works as some kind of tech executive for a major software company, makes serious money. And here's the part that made my jaw drop. Grace had convinced him that Aaron died during childbirth. She told Aaron's real dad that his kid was dead. Joshua's reading over my shoulder now, flipping through pages of evidence. There are copies of bank transfers going back 17 years. Robert had been sending Grace $3,000 every month, thinking it was for grief counseling and medical bills related to losing their son. For almost 2 decades. That's over $600,000 total. So Grace has been collecting money from Aaron's real father this entire time, telling him his son was dead while using Dad's money to raise Aaron in luxury. Plus now, she's been stealing my inheritance on top of everything else. This woman is like a professional con artist. The folder has copies of everything. Aaron's original birth certificate listing Robert Chen as the father. Medical records from when Aaron was born showing he was perfectly healthy. Even photos that Grace apparently sent to Robert over the years showing some fake grave marker with Aaron's name on it and fake death dates. I spend the rest of the weekend reading through everything twice, making sure I understand the full scope of what Grace has been doing. She's not just a gold digger who married Dad for his money. She's been running elaborate scams on multiple people for years. Sunday night, I decide to track down Robert Chen. Takes me about an hour of Googling to find his company website and work email. I write him a message explaining who I am and that I have important information about his son Aaron, who he thinks died 17 years ago. I attach copies of the most important documents from Dad's investigation. The guy replies within 3 hours. Wants to talk on the phone immediately. Robert Chen sounds exactly like what you'd expect from a successful tech executive. Direct, intelligent, and absolutely furious when I explain what Grace has been doing. His voice starts shaking when I tell him Aaron is alive and 17 years old, has no idea his real father exists. You're telling me I've been mourning a child who isn't dead for 17 years? He asks. Yeah, and she's been collecting money from you while telling Aaron his father was some deadbeat who abandoned them. Robert goes quiet for a long time. When he finally speaks again, his voice is completely different. Cold and calculating in a way that makes me glad I'm not Grace right now. I want to meet my son, and I want to destroy the woman who stole him from me. We talk strategy for over an hour. Robert's flying out from California Thursday with his own legal team. Between my estate fraud case and his parental fraud case, Grace is about to get hit from multiple directions simultaneously. Tuesday evening, Robert calls me back to confirm his flight details. Says he's bringing 2 lawyers and a private investigator of his own. Wants to coordinate with my legal team to make sure Grace gets hit with everything at once so she can't run or hide assets. Does Aaron know anything about this? Robert asks. No, he has no idea. Grace has him completely convinced that his dad was some loser who ditched them when he was a baby. What's he like? My son? I think about how to answer that honestly. Grace has spoiled him pretty badly. He's not exactly grateful for what he has. Robert's quiet for a minute. Well, that's something we can work on. First priority is getting him away from that woman and making sure he knows the truth. That night, I can barely sleep thinking about what's going to happen when this all comes out. Aaron's about to learn his entire life has been built on lies. Grace is about to face fraud charges in multiple states. And Robert's about to meet the son he thought was dead. This is going to destroy Grace's whole world. And honestly, after everything she's put me through, I can't wait to watch it happen. Wednesday morning, the lawyer calls to set up the confrontation for Friday afternoon in his conference room. I haven't seen Grace since the day I moved out 4 months ago. When she walks into that conference room at 2 p.m., she's wearing this expensive black dress that probably cost more than I used to make in a month, carrying some designer purse. All bought with money she stole from me, most likely. She sits down looking annoyed, like this is just some paperwork inconvenience she has to deal with before getting back to her normal life. Keeps checking her phone and sighing dramatically. What's this about? She asks the lawyer. I thought we handled everything with Richard's estate months ago. That's when Robert walks in from the side office where he'd been waiting. Grace's face goes completely white, like she just saw a ghost. Her hand starts shaking, and she almost drops her phone. Hello, Grace, Robert says in this calm voice that somehow sounds more threatening than if he was yelling. We need to talk about our son. Grace literally stumbles trying to stand up, grabs the edge of the table to keep from falling over. Robert, what are you doing here? I'm here to meet Aaron. You know, the son you told me died 17 years ago. The look on Grace's face is something I'll never forget. Like watching someone's entire world crumble in real time. She keeps opening and closing her mouth, but no words come out. Robert's lawyer hands her a thick stack of papers. Fraud, kidnapping, theft, identity theft, wire fraud across state lines. Should I keep reading, or do you get the picture? Meanwhile, my lawyer starts laying out my case. Grace has been illegally occupying property that belongs to me. She stole approximately $180,000 from my inheritance. She charged me rent to live in my own house while spending my money on her son's luxury lifestyle. Grace finally finds her voice and starts making excuses. Says she did everything to protect Aaron, that Robert would have taken him away, that she was just trying to give her son a stable life. All the same bullshit she's probably been telling herself for years. The lawyers cut through Grace's drama real quick. She has 48 hours to vacate my property. All accounts remain frozen until she pays back every penny to both me and Robert. Criminal charges are being filed in Colorado and California starting Monday morning. Grace tries to argue, but gets served with papers for 3 different lawsuits. Her hands are shaking so bad she can barely hold the documents. She walks out looking like someone just ran over her dog. The hardest part is telling Aaron. We drive to my house that afternoon. Still feels weird calling it my house, but the lawyer says I need to start thinking of it that way. Aaron's in the driveway detailing his BMW when we pull up, probably getting ready for some party with his prep school friends. He looks confused seeing me get out of a car with some older Asian guy in an expensive suit, probably wondering why I'm back at his house with some stranger. Aaron, we need to talk, I call out. Grace comes running out of the house trying to intercept us. Aaron, get inside right now. Don't listen to anything they tell you. Why? Aaron looks genuinely confused for maybe the first time in his life. What's going on here? Robert steps forward and introduces himself as Aaron's biological father. Aaron drops the microfiber cloth he was using on his car. What? My dad died when I was a baby. Some loser who bailed on us. No, son, I didn't die. Your mother told me you were dead. Robert shows Aaron pictures on his phone. Baby photos, ultrasound images, medical records from when Aaron was born. Explains how he's been sending Grace money for 17 years, thinking it was to help her cope with losing him. Aaron's reaction isn't what you'd expect, though. Instead of being emotional about meeting his real dad, or angry about the lies, he immediately starts calculating what this means financially. His first question is whether this affects his trust fund for college. Wait, so you've been sending mom money this whole time? Aaron asks. How much money? When Robert tells him about the $3,000 monthly payments, Aaron's eyes light up like he just won the lottery. Starts asking if Robert can afford to maintain his current lifestyle, whether he'll still be able to go to private school, if Robert's house in California is nicer than this one. The kid literally asks if this means he gets to keep the BMW or if he'll be getting a better car. Shows zero concern about the emotional impact of learning his entire life was built on lies. Then Aaron finds out about Grace stealing my inheritance, and his reaction is even worse. Instead of feeling bad that I got screwed over, he's pissed that there's less money available overall. Wants to know if Grace spending my money means there's less for him in the long run. So wait, if Christian gets the house back, where are we supposed to live? Aaron asks Grace. Figure it out, I tell him. This was never your house to begin with. Robert still takes Aaron with him that night after filing for emergency custody. But I can tell he's having second thoughts about the fairy tale reunion he'd been hoping for. Aaron packs 3 suitcases full of designer clothes and keeps complaining about having to leave his gaming setup behind. Grace has to be out of my house by Sunday. I drive by Monday morning and she's gone. Left it surprisingly clean, probably because she knows I could have her arrested if she damages anything. I move back into my childhood bedroom that weekend. It's weird being in the house again after everything that's happened. Feels bigger somehow, more peaceful without Grace and Aaron's constant drama. The legal stuff is still ongoing, but Grace is basically screwed. She's facing criminal charges in 2 states for fraud, owes over $750,000 in restitution between me and Robert, and lost custody of Aaron to his real father. Last I heard, Robert and Aaron are doing family therapy, but it's not going great. Aaron keeps pushing for more expensive stuff, and Robert's starting to see what kind of person Grace raised. Kid's more interested in his inheritance prospects than building an actual relationship. As for me, I'm back in my house, enrolled at community college for business classes, and trying to figure out what to do with my life now that I'm not broke anymore. Thinking about expanding Dad's old workshop in the garage, maybe starting some kind of automotive repair business. Grace tried to contact me a few weeks ago through some mutual acquaintance, wanting to explain her side and asking if we could work something out regarding the house. I told them to give Grace a message. She can explain everything to the judge. She thought she was so clever, playing the victim while robbing everyone blind. But Dad was always 3 steps ahead.